Hi everyone, it's Jacqueline. So today we're going to be thinking about writing an introduction. So this is applicable if you're a standard level or a higher level IB student, and you will be taking paper 2 or paper 3 for the final examination. You're going to have to write introductions for all of the essays you write. So that will be 2 essays if you're doing standard level, and it will be 5 essays across the 2 papers if you're doing higher level history. So for writing an introduction, I think that these are the 3 essential things you must do to have an effective introduction. So firstly, you must set the scene or provide background information. Secondly, you should lay out your arguments. And thirdly, you should state your thesis. Okay, so let's say the question is, examine the impact of the foreign policy of 2 authoritarian states on the maintenance of power in those states. Okay, so first of all, remember we need to set the scene or provide background information. So let's say our 2 authoritarian states are going to be Hitler's Germany and Mao's China. So Hitler and Mao are our 2 key individuals. So we will mention them in the introduction. We also want to set up the time frame. So that means key dates. So for Hitler, the key dates would be 1933 to 1945. And for Mao, the key dates would be 1949 to 1976. And of course, you want to mention the key countries where these authoritarian leaders are, so Germany and China. So if we put this information together into some sentences, we get something like this. Adolf Hitler and Mao Zedong were 2 20th century authoritarian leaders. Hitler maintained his power over Germany from 1933 to 1945, while Mao maintained his power over China from 1949 until 1976. There's the beginning of your introduction. Now, the second thing you need to do is lay out your arguments. So they might look like this. Argument 1. Hitler's successful foreign policy in the 1930s contributed greatly to his maintenance of power. Argument 2. Mao also had some foreign policy successes that contributed somewhat to his maintenance of power. Argument 3. Hitler's foreign policy ultimately contributed to his downfall in the 1940s, while Mao's foreign policy was of lesser significance than his sheer ruthlessness in his maintenance of power. So these are the arguments. Again, if we want to put them together into kind of a coherent sentence or 2 sentences, successful foreign policy contributed to both Hitler and Mao's maintenance of power. However, Hitler's foreign policy ultimately contributed to his downfall, while Mao's policy was of lesser significance in his maintenance and fall from power. So there we have the background, we've listed out the arguments. Now the final thing we need to do is state your thesis. So thus, foreign policy can be considered more significant for some authoritarian leaders' maintenance of power than others. So if we put this all together, we have our introduction. Adolf Hitler and Mao Zedong were 2 20th century authoritarian leaders. Hitler maintained his power over Germany from 1933 to 1945, while Mao maintained his power over China from 1945 until 1976. Successful foreign policy contributed to both Hitler and Mao's maintenance of power. However, Hitler's foreign policy ultimately contributed to his downfall, while Mao's policy was of lesser significance in his maintenance and fall from power. Thus, foreign policy can be considered more significant for some authoritarian leaders' maintenance of power than others. So there you have it, an introduction which sets up the scene, gives some background information, outlines the key arguments, and states the thesis. Those are the things you need to do for an effective introduction for any IB history essay. So have a go, practice it yourself. If you want any feedback on your attempted introductions, please post them below and I'll get back to you. Good luck.